I'd really like to get a gauge of the different generations we have in the audience. Are there any baby boomers in here? A few. Any Gen Xers? A few as well. And millennials, of course, yes. And any Gen Zers come in and sneak in here? Possibly. Great. I love to see all of our different generations coming together, and I'm actually here to show you that we're more alike than you think. So I was browsing the internet the other day in preparation for this talk, and I came across this article titled, "How to Cure Millennials." It included very detailed instructions on how to keep us on top of our work, off of our phones, and of course, to stop taking selfies. And you know, I was intrigued, so I kept reading. On my phone, mind you, and as a millennial myself, I didn't even know I was sick. And this is just typical to the stereotypes put on our generation. We've all had someone else refer to us as lazy, entitled, or self-absorbed. Luckily, especially us as college students, we have these professors who are taking away all types of technology. Finally, a cure for our crippling disease. And I think we've all experienced this in some shape or form. We've all had someone else try and push their own views of what success is onto us. This is generally what we refer to as generation shaming, where people from older or younger generations ignore or discredit others because we come from a different time. In the workplace, this is referred to as age discrimination, which is legally covered by the ADA, but there are only a few states, like Florida, that cover discrimination for both older and younger generations. Now, this isn't some new idea, and I'm not here to persecute or victimize anyone. I mean, us millennials even do this to our grandparents, and we do this to people that are younger than us somehow. Rather, I'm here to challenge this ongoing issue of who can even determine what success really looks like? And my answer is everyone. So for today's talk, I'm going to be addressing our different generations, technology's role, redefining our future, and how all of these are related. To give you an overview of our different generations, we could start with the baby boomers, who were generally born from the 1940s to the 1960s. During their time, they had events like Woodstock, the race to space, and they know exactly where they were for the JFK assassination. When they were up and coming, they had events, or they went through things like, when they were up and coming, they were stereotyped as hippies, druggies, and rioters, as many of them participated in the beginnings of the civil rights movement. Now today, the youngest of this generation is now 58 years old. They've worked their entire lives, and they have no intention of quitting, hence the increase in the retirement age to 67. During their time, they had new technology like color TV, hard drives, and the atomic bomb. Following them is Gen X, born generally from the 1960s to the 1980s. Now this is mainly our parents' generation, and they had events like the birth of Disney, MTV, and they know exactly where they were for the Challenger explosion. Now, when they were up and coming, they were stereotyped as the doers, and people said that they were cynical and disaffected, and rightfully so. They went through events like the Enron scandal and Watergate. They had to get to work immediately, and those that were lucky enough to attend a university came out into an extremely brutal world. They were the last hired, the first fired, and women had to get out of the household and into work, and then they experienced something even worse, a Great Recession. During their time, they had new technology like, They had new technology like beepers, ATMs, VCRs, and CDs. Following them are us millennials, who were born from the 1980s to 2000. For the record, those of us in our 20s right now are the youngest of the millennial generation. The rest of us are actually out there in the workplace or living back with our parents. We had new technology like PlayStation, cell phones, Apple, and Google. And we went through events like the Great Recession, and we know exactly where we were when 9/11 happened. Now, in the workplace, we're known as the movers. We're constantly looking for something new, wanting to move up in the workplace, and of course, wanting to make an impact. Don't be fooled. We do want to make an impact, but we want to do it all on our own, and yes, we want to be recognized for it. The truly selfless and inclusive generation is actually Gen Z. They're like the youngest sibling of every family. They've been watching us quietly while we make all the mistakes, so they know exactly what not to do. I also like to refer to them as the Goldilocks generation. While the rest of us became really obsessed or really against our technology, Gen Z was born and pacified by them, and they're kind of over it. In 2015, a survey found that 77% of those years 12 and older owned a smartphone. See, to them, smart technology is old news, but using it to their advantage is what's becoming a trend. This internet, what's becoming new, they've simulated this relationship with the internet and each other. Because of the internet, we don't need to experience anything in person anymore. We can see and feel everything going on all over the world at the tip of our fingers. See, with them, they have events like what's going on with our school shootings, and even our high schoolers today have been able to make an impact. And they've been able to connect with events like America's First Black President, legalized gay marriage, and they've been watching women establish their platform with the Me Too movement. And they've seen all of this through their phones. As you can see, we've always had new technology and innovation. Humans have created fire, light bulbs, planes, and now robot teachers. It's interesting to note that we don't compare these major life-changing inventions. We don't say, yeah, you may have made the compass, but he made the electric car. Not at all. Rather, we appreciate and we add on to these inventions because it was the best that was created with the resources available. Right now, our most abundant resource is the internet and how easily we can access it. Yet, we still feel this disconnect between wanting to stay plugged in 24/7 and being judged for actually doing so. Even in the classrooms, we feel this wariness when it comes to using our phones and our laptops, but then when we get to actually in the classrooms, we're not even allowed to use them. And these actually don't affect a student's performance. A cell phone and a laptop actually don't help or hinder us. Trust me, I've done the research. This past year, I conducted my honors thesis in the Department of Psychology. We ran over 300 participants, which gave us a window into the relationship between cell phones and a student's academic performance. I put my participants in two different conditions: those that were allowed versus those that were restricted from using their cell phones. With both conditions, they were required to have their volume on loud, and they received at least 3 notifications from my lab assistants. What we found from this study was that those in the restricted section had almost identical scores to those that were allowed. Additionally, with those in the restricted section, the more notification that they received, the higher their negative emotions. And the higher their negative emotions, the lower they scored on the task given. Think about that. And yet, we still have these professors that are trying to take away all types of technology in the classrooms because that's how it worked when I grew up. This mentality is not only selfish, but detrimental to our society. Your views of success are exactly that, your views. Just like we have our own political and social views, our views of success are subjective, and we can no longer push them onto anyone else. Without slowing down our progress, we have to be willing to learn from the older generations and listen to the younger ones. Within these shifts of perspective come shifts in technology. In the classrooms, this technology integration can look like blended learning, virtual reality, and even specializing in subjects starting in high school. Now, I'm not saying we need high-tech gadgets or smart technology in the classrooms. What I'm saying is we should be approaching teaching differently because our learning styles are so different. There's no more of a one-size-fits-all learning method, which is exactly why we need to challenge what's been traditional in the classrooms, especially in college. When we were growing up, we were all required to take those classes that would one day be relevant to the real world. For example, for those of us that had to take those typing classes in middle school, it was because we were required to one day have advanced computing skills in the workplace. But then we got to this surprising gap when it came to the college classrooms. Additionally, Gen Z has only grown up with the internet and smartphones, so they only know a life with it. So there's really no way that we can push them out into the college classrooms without the internet. These integrations of technology have to continue into the workplace. There's a reason why we admire companies like Facebook, Airbnb, and Google. It's because they focus on their employee experience, and they allow their employees the freedom to choose how they want to succeed. When a company is willing to invest in their employees, the employees will be willing to serve the company right back. This dynamic relationship, which I'm not simplifying, it's very complex, but it's easily attainable when companies are willing to invest in benefits like two-way mentoring, rotational programs, and even creating hybrid office spaces, just as long as everyone is willing to adapt with these shifts. Even companies like KFC use virtual reality in their training programs, and Aetna, who says 15,000 of their employees don't even own a desk. See, because of all of this new technology, we have new ways of flexibility, which isn't some new idea. We've always had flexible workplaces, but there are constantly new additions to it, which is exactly how we've been redefining what the workplace should look like. Now, this isn't our first time we've taken things and redefined it. We've taken phrases like salty, flake, spilling tea, and thirsty, which now have nothing to do with food. We've redefined what work means to us and what we expect from our companies. According to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, in 2016, they found that people aged from 18 to 28 held on average 7.2 jobs, a turnover rate costing our US economy $30.2 billion a year. I'm sure you can all guess what our top reasons for leaving a company are: lack of flexibility and lack of upward growth. For those people that are still unwilling to adapt to us, we either move up or move out into a company that can give us exactly what we want. Additionally, Gen Z is about to enter the workforce, and they've redefined work as finding a meaning within their company and working for a purpose, not a paycheck. And for those that are still trying to keep us out of the workplace, by 2020, which is less than 2 years away, millennials will occupy 50% of the global workforce. All of these different generations have to prepare for this immense shift. For Gen X, realize that baby boomers once had to adapt around you and your new technology. If we could all take a step back, you'd realize that we want to build success with you, not against you. In order for us to all succeed all together, we have to be willing to accept that this progress and the technological changes that come with it are inevitable. We're in an era of redefining what's been given to us. Younger generations are affecting older ones. Just look at our high schoolers and look at how they've been affecting our political climate, and they can't even vote yet. Look at how women are no longer defining their worth on their men. They're staying in school longer, speaking out at work, and marrying later, if at all. Look at how social media is bringing your grandma on Facebook, connecting older and younger generations and helping us speak the same language. Now, progress doesn't always mean only moving forward and forgetting everything that's happened in the past. I mean, we have the 80s coming back into our wardrobes, and we even have flip phones that are coming back in stock. We have no idea what's going to change in the next century. What we do know is we can no longer define our success only on what's happened in the past and only letting our society define it for us. What worked for baby boomers will not be what works for Gen Z. Similarly, millennials have to understand that Gen X may not define their success on flexibility or making an impact. We all have these different personality types, which is exactly why we all don't work the same. Additionally, Gen Z is here, and they're about to enter the most diverse workforce. We have people staying in the workforce longer and coming into work quickly. How are we creating this environment that encourages everyone to learn from the best of the older generations while encouraging a progressive future for the next ones? So, for all of the different generations in the audience today, I hope that you can somehow take away something. Just look at how, as we all have seen, that technology and today's innovation is only going to get stronger and faster. If we all realize that one day the internet is going to take over the world, or maybe it won't, then we'll all understand that we have to learn to adapt to both older and younger generations. So for all of the different generations in the audience today, I hope you can take away a couple things. Blend into every role rather than to just one job description. Be a sponge and learn from those that are both older and younger than you. Proactively invest in organizational changes that address this evolving workforce. And finally, create a sustainable system that will allow every generation after us to define success on their own terms. Thank you.